I've had my fair share of hunting experiences, deep in the heart of the Kentucky woods. You see, I consider myself an avid and experienced hunter, always tracking elusive game through those dense forests. But nothing, and I mean nothing, could have prepared me for that night I came face to face with the creature that defied all explanation. It was an evening like any other. I had returned home later than usual, my stomach growling with hunger after a long day of tracking. I decided to fire up the grill on the back porch and cook myself a thick, juicy steak. The sizzle of the meat and the smell of it cooking made my mouth water. As I stood there, tongs in hand, flipping the steak over the hot flames, I saw movement at the tree line of my backyard. My instincts kicked in, and I grabbed the shotgun I kept on the porch. With a firm voice, I yelled out a warning, making it clear that I was armed and not to be messed with. I told the intruder to keep moving, to get off my property. The figure at the tree line didn't budge. My heart pounded as I gave a second warning, louder this time, but still it remained motionless, like a shadow lurking in the dark. I couldn't make out much detail in the dim light, but I could sense that something was very wrong. Then, without warning, it happened. The figure, whatever it was, lunged towards me with lightning speed, sprinting across the yard. Adrenaline surged through me, and I reacted on instinct. I fired a single shot from the shotgun, and the creature let out an unearthly howl of pain as the blast hit it. It stumbled back, retreating into the darkness. My heart raced as I stood there, trembling with a mixture of fear and confusion. What had I just encountered? The creature's eyes, glowing yellow in the night, haunted my thoughts. The next morning, my property was swarming with law enforcement. Among the officers was my old buddy, Sheriff Daniels. He told me there were federal agents on the scene as well, and that they weren't sharing much information. But he did let slip something unsettling. They had found an arm, torn off and discarded. As we examined the grounds together, we stumbled upon peculiar footprints in the dirt. They were unlike anything I'd ever seen. Large, with claw-like impressions, they left no doubt that the creature that had invaded my property was unlike any known animal. It was then that an FBI agent arrived, his demeanor cold and authoritative. He glanced at the strange footprints and, to my shock, casually brushed them away with his foot. He told us that it was time for us to leave, giving no explanation or reassurance. In the days that followed, my friend Sheriff Daniels became distant. He refused to share any further details about the investigation. It was clear something dark was at play, something that had silenced even him. He mentioned being threatened by the FBI agents. This information angered me. Rumors began to spread like wildfire through the small town. People whispered about a creature, a monster that could only be described as a werewolf or a dogman. The mystery surrounding that night remained unsolved, but one thing was for sure: I had encountered something beyond explanation. I wish I could give you more answers, but the truth is, I never did figure out what that creature was. All I know is that my life was forever changed by that encounter, and I can't help but wonder what other secrets the Kentucky woods might be hiding. This story, my friend, is as true as the moon in the night sky. The vast expanse of Arches National Park in Utah stretched before us, a landscape of awe-inspiring beauty. My girlfriend and I embarked on a backpacking adventure, ready for the serenity of the wilderness. But what we encountered in those remote canyons was far from serene. On our first night, as we sat by the fire, the howl pierced the stillness of the canyon. It was unlike any animal sound I have ever heard. Deep, primal, and utterly terrifying, it echoed relentlessly, making us feel uneasy and insignificant in its presence. Clutching my .357 Magnum, I tried to reassure myself, but the unease persisted. Something about that howl unnerved me to the core. As the night deepened, the sinister chorus grew louder, and it became apparent that we were not alone. The howls seemed to emanate from all directions. The strangest part was how the howls seemed coordinated, as if these creatures were communicating with each other, planning their movements. It became evident that we were not just observers. We were the prey in this messed up situation. In a hasty decision fueled by fear, we abandoned our campsite, leaving behind tents and gear. Escape was our only thought. The trail back to our camper van seemed endless, and the howls pursued us, growing louder with every step. The creatures were closing in. We halted and decided to hide behind a massive rock along the trail. When the creature got closer, I could hear it breathing, its howls communicating with its unseen companions. My girlfriend stifled a terrified scream as the creature approached, and that split-second slip gave away our hiding spot. 30 feet away, it materialized from the shadows, a monstrous creature standing 6 feet tall, weighing around 300 pounds. Its eyes gleamed with evil intent, and its teeth, sharp as razors, shined bright in the moonlight. It let out a bone-chilling roar and charged toward us. I fired my .357 Magnum twice, the deafening gunshots ripping through the night. The creature staggered, wounded and howled in pain. It bought us a few precious moments to sprint towards our camper van, but the nightmare was not over. The other creatures, drawn by the shots and the agonized cries of their companion, descended upon us like a tidal wave. The earth beneath us trembled as their relentless advance grew louder. It was as though a stampede of unimaginable horror was closing in. Our camper van was a beacon of salvation, still a quarter mile away. Desperation fueled our sprint as we fled toward it. Silhouettes of pursuing creatures loomed in the distance, red eyes gleaming with hunger. We reached the van just in time, our hearts pounding like war drums. The creatures closed in, a nightmarish tide of darkness and dread. We sped away, leaving the horrors of that nightmarish wilderness behind. But our ordeal was not over. The trauma of that night was a weight we both carried, and the strain on our relationship proved too great. A week later, we parted ways, unable to escape the haunting memories of that chilling encounter. As the crimson sun dipped below the jagged peaks of the Colorado mountains, I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. My faithful companion, a black Labrador named Shadow, sensed it too. We were on a hiking trip, just the two of us, seeking peace in the heart of nature. We had ventured deep into the wilderness, far from any sign of civilization. The silence was profound, save for the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant rush of a mountain stream. It was the kind of tranquility that could make your heart race with its sheer intensity. As the evening settled in, I began setting up our campsite, while Shadow kept a vigilant watch, her keen senses attuned to every sound and movement. It was then that I heard it, a deep, low growling. I looked at Shadow, who had stiffened into a defensive stance, her hackles raised. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. There, emerging from the darkening woods, was a creature I could not explain. It stood on 2 legs, but it was no human. It had matted, filthy fur and had a head that resembled a grotesque fusion of wolf and man. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly red light, and its claws gleamed wickedly in the fading light. Before I could react, the creature lunged into our camp, its snarling maw mere inches from my face. Panic gripped me, but before the nightmare could fully unfold, Shadow sprang into action. She leaped at the creature, her fangs bared, and a fierce battle ensued. My heart pounded as I watched my loyal companion, my only real friend, defend me with all her might. But the odds were against her, as the creature's strength was otherworldly. With a sickening crunch, it silenced Shadow's valiant struggle, leaving her lifeless body sprawled in the dirt. My grief and shock was unbearable, but I had to survive. The creature turned its gaze towards me, its mouth stained with Shadow's blood. I reached for my bear spray, trembling with fear and rage, and unleashed the entire canister into the creature's face. Blinded and choking, the dogman recoiled, giving me a precious moment to flee. I sprinted back through the woods, every step fueled by fear, guilt, and sorrow. I left behind the lifeless body of my dear friend, unable to bear the thought of retrieving her in that moment. Days passed, my mind haunted by the savage attack and Shadow's ultimate sacrifice. I couldn't escape the guilt and regret that gnawed at me for abandoning her in the wilderness. I decided to return to the site, determined to give her a proper farewell. As I approached the spot where the nightmarish encounter had occurred, my heart sank. Shadow's body was gone. Whether it had been taken by the beast that had killed her or some other predator, I would never know. I was left with nothing but the weight of my loss and the pain of knowing that I had let down my best friend. The mountains, once a place of solace and beauty, had become a desolate, haunting landscape. I had lost not only my loyal companion, but also my connection to the wilderness. The scars on my arm, souvenirs of that encounter, were a constant reminder of the horrors I had witnessed in the woods. Haunted by that memory, I could never escape the shadow of regret and sorrow that now defined my life. I had lost my best friend, and with her, a piece of my own soul. The Colorado mountains, once a sanctuary, were now a desolate abyss of darkness and despair.